30,000 feathers. That is how many individual feathers it took to build one owl for the show. One owl. And apparently Scabbers the rat actually bites on set for real. If that doesn't tell you everything about the level of crafting that is going into this HBO Harry Potter series, I don't know what will. Let's get into it. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Tanveer Talks, and I'm Tanveer. This is a show where we go deeper than the algorithm, so let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about Finding Harry, the craft behind the magic, behind the scenes documentary that was released on the HBO Max, right? It was a special that was dropped on April 5th, right on the heads, the heels of the very first teaser for the Harry Potter series, right? Now this special is about 25 to 30 minutes long, and it's narrated by Nick Frost, who is our new Hagrid, by the way, and it covers everything from how they cast the new trio to the set design, to the costumes, the creatures, work, all of it, right? I watched the whole thing multiple times and I have thoughts, and let me break it down section by section, because this documentary is actually structured really well and each part deserves its own conversation, right? So let's start the documentary, where the documentary actually starts. So let's start the audition process. So they talk about the casting director, Lucy Bevan and Evan Brockman, say that they went through like over 40,000 auditions. 40,000. Like 40,000 children across the United Kingdom, right? They were reviewing somewhere between 500 and 1,000 tapes per day. That's not a, casting process. That is like a full-scale operation. So, and from all of that, they found 3 kids: Dominic McLaughlin and as Harry Potter, Alastair Stout as Ron Weasley, and Arabella Stanton as Hermione Granger, right? And here's what I love about each of them. Like Dominic, this is the detail, that got me. Like he showed up to this audition with a poem, he wrote himself about a weekend in his life. Not a monologue from the books, not a prepared scene, a poem, right, about his own life. The casting director described him as, having a quiet confidence and a vulnerability. He's like, yeah, that is exactly, what Harry Potter is. Harry is like not a loud hero. He's a kid who carries something heavy, and you need to feel that without him saying it. I think Dominic gets that. And Alastair as Ron is, described as the charming and funny from the first second. Like, perfect, right? Ron's whole thing is that he makes you feel like at ease. He makes you laugh, and then he surprises you with how much heart he has, right? And that energy sounds right. And Arabella as Hermione, she performed the poem Invictus at her audition. Think about that choice, right? Invictus is a poem about being unconquerable, about refusing to be defeated, right? Hermione Granger in poem form. So honestly, that's kind of like a perfect casting energy right there. From the footage I've seen, she's going to, pull this off. And one more thing from the special, apparently, the 3 of them are already like best friends. They are constantly, playing rock, paper, scissors between takes. That generally makes me feel good about this, because the chemistry between Harry, Ron, and Hermione is the whole show. So if those 3 kids actually like each other in real life, it's going to be, going to be right on screen. So now the adult cast, right? John Lithgow as Dumbledore, 6-time Emmy winner, 2-time Tony winner, Olivier Award winner. And then in the documentary, Lithgow talks about the 8-episode format, giving the story room to breathe, to go down the rabbit hole, to explore scenes from wings of the story that the movies, never had time for. So he gets it, right? He understands that what a serialized format allows. That a 2-hour film doesn't. And the man was like 80 years old when the production started, so he will be around like 87 at the wrap party. So he said yes anyway, right? That could mean something. And then Severus Snape, like the Paapa Essiedu is a Severus Snape. Look, I don't like the conversation around this casting have been like intense. Some people are upset, and those feelings come from a real place. I'm not dismissing those feelings, but I am going to tell you like what I actually think, right? Like, Paapa Essiedu is a genuinely extraordinary actor, Emmy nominated, BAFTA nominated, started his career at the Royal Shakespeare Company. Snape is one of those most lyric characters in fiction, and all that exterior sitting on top of something buried and tragic. That kind of performance requires real range. And in the documentary, what they show him when they show him, walking through that corridor in costume, like he actually looks the part, right? Like, I think he's going to pull it off. Let the performance speak, right? Like, and honestly, I like him as an actor, right? And Janet McTeer as Professor McGonagall, and she said in the special that walking onto the Great Hall set felt like walking into a cathedral. The quote alone tell you she understands the weight of what this is. And McGonagall carries Hogwarts, and McTeer sounds like, she knows that, right? And this is where the good documentary starts to get generally exciting. Production designer Mara lays out that the visual philosophy of the entire series is, in one word, like naturalism. Magic in the show is rooted in the natural world. It doesn't feel like a theme park. It feels like something that grew out of the earth. What does that look like in practice? The corridors of Hogwarts now have creeping vines, sprawling trees inside the stone walls, not decorative, like actually woven into the architecture, right? The castle feels alive, organic, like Hogwarts itself is a living thing, which, if you think about it, that book kind of implies that anyways, right? And then there's the Privet Drive, right? They built the actual house from the ground, a literal physical set, not a stage dressing, not a green screen, composite, a full house. The design brief for the Muggle world is described as a fantastically mundane, recognizably 1990s, almost oppressively ordinary. Because, that's the point. The more grounded and grey and the boring the Muggle world feels, the more extraordinary the moment Harry steps into Diagon Alley becomes. And the contrast is the magic, right? And speaking of Diagon Alley, right, it looks, I looked at it like I was watching it, like a leaky cauldron, Gringotts, which has these, imposing marble and gold way to like the Great Hall, like everything looked so good, right? And platform 9 3/4, like the Hogwarts Express, all of it built practically. This production is minimizing, green screen wherever possible. And I think that is the right call. Why the original films still hold up visually after 25 years? Because those sets were real. Actors were in real spaces, reacting to the real things, right? That physically shows on screen, even when you can't consciously, identify it, right? And now I want to address this, directly. And some people are going to watch this and say it doesn't look exactly like the movies, right? And my response to that is like, it shouldn't. Like, movies are their own thing. They exist. They are not going anywhere. This show has to have its own identity. The potions, the classrooms, like the potion classroom has been reimagined. The interior design of Hogwarts has a different texture, right? Which is good. Like, that's a creative decision, not a mistake. If you just want the movies are right there. This show needs to be something new, or there's no, there's actually no reason to exist for it. So, and then the next part, like this is a part, documentary that made me sit up straight, right? The production's philosophy on the creature is like minimum CGI where possible. Build it, physically in real life. And the scale of what they're doing is generally staggering, right? Hedwig, the owl, they built her as a full animatronic. And to give you a sense of the detail, it took 36,000 individual feathers to construct one owl, right? 36,000. The engineering behind the movement, the weight, the way she holds herself is extensive, because Hedwig is not a prop in this show. She's a character, and Harry's only real companion for a stretch of his childhood, right? They're treating her that way. But it doesn't stop at all. Scabbers, the Ron's rat, the animatronic is so well built that it apparently actually bites on set, which is both impressive and slightly terrifying, right? Trevor the Toad looks incredible. And they're introducing creatures that have never, been on screen before, right? The Dugbog, the Flobberworm, the creatures from the books that, films never had time for. So that's one of the promises of this format. The world of Harry Potter is like so much bigger than what 8 movies could contain. A decade of television can actually do like justice to all of it, right? And this practical effects approach matters more than it might seem, right? When an actor is holding a real animatronic, they respond to it differently than they, to do a tennis ball on a stick. The micro expressions, the extensive physical reactions, all of that is real. And the audience feels it. Even if they can't articulate why, this is one of the quiet decisions that will make the show feel different from a lot of modern fantasy, right? Yeah. And then there was a costume segment in one of the most quietly thoughtful parts of the documentary, right? The team has made like a deliberate like shift away from like synthetic fabrics towards natural British world and organic cotton, right, which ties directly back to the naturalism philosophy. Even the clothes are grounded in the physical world. The Hogwarts robes are designed by house, and each house has its own distinct design language, different textures, different weights, different silhouettes. The thought behind how the Muggle world dresses versus how wizards dress is built into every garment. Muggles wear what 991 actually looked like. Wizards wear something that feels like that it came from a different time entirely, right? That visual contrast again is doing work. When one of the designers talks about sharing Hogwarts robe with like friends as a schoolgirl, and now being the person who gets to build them for a new generation, that kind of story is all over this documentary, right? These aren't hired guns who did a job. They are fans who grew up with this world and are now the custodians of it, right? And one graphic designer mentioned that the perfecting the items on McGonagall's desk gave the entire team actual goosebumps. Right? You can feel that level of care. And here's the thing that I keep coming back to, right? This show is planned to run for 10 consecutive years. One season per book. 1 year per season. The young actors playing Harry, Ron, and Hermione are going to grow up inside this story, literally, in real time, and the audience is going to watch them become who they become, right? And this is something that television has almost never done, right? You watch a kid at 11, then at 12, then at 13, and that's not acting, that's just time. The books are fundamentally a coming of age story. Like, the emotional truth of that story is most powerful when you are watching it happen in real life, right? If this show does its job, by the time we reach Deathly Hallows, those three actors will have lived the version of this journey for real. John Lithgow talks about this in the documentary: the 8-episode format, the decade-long commitment, the room to breathe. And the Paapa Essiedu talks about the responsibility of stepping into a story this embedded in people's lives, a story that shaped childhoods, that was formative for an entire generation. And there's a crew member in the special who met his wife on the set on the 3rd film, right? Multiple people talk about being the 2nd generation of their family to work on this franchise, right? This isn't just a production, right? It has history attached to it, and the people making it know that. The documentary ends with a glimpse of platform 9 3/4 and the Hogwarts Express, and watching Dominic McLaughlin in that moment, in that costume, about to step into the world, something just feels right about it, right? And now, like, I want to be honest. I really want to be honest with you, right? Because that's what this show is about. I came into finding Harry ready to be skeptical, right? There is a version of this that is nothing more than a very expensive nostalgia product, a polished copy of something we already have. But that's not what I saw. What I saw was a production that has a philosophy, naturalism, practicality, the craft over spectacle, and is executing on it with a level of intentionality that is hard to fake in a behind the scenes documentary. You can tell when a crew is going through the motions and this crew is not going through the motions, right? The controversies exist, right? They're real. I'm not pretending otherwise, but based on what's actually on screen, every single actor looks like the part, right? And more importantly, the ones who've spoken, they feel the part. And Snape walking down the corridor, McGonagall talking about the Great Hall like it's a cathedral, Dumbledore described as a man who let the story breathe. As long as these actors embody the characters from the books, not just the movies, the books, right? I think this is going to be okay, more than okay, right? December 25th, 2026, Christmas Day, HBO. Like, I'm gonna be watching, honestly. I think you should be too, right? You should not, miss out on this. And yeah, so that is it for episode 17 today. Like, if this landed for you, please subscribe on my YouTube channel. Hit me on X, WGamer786. Drop a comment down below. Are you a team reboot, or are the original films still your definitive Hogwarts? I want to know. Peace.